Hey guys, and welcome to today's World of Tanks video for console, both PS4 and Xbox One. We're going to be checking out a tank that was so bad prior to the update, or I shouldn't really call it awful, but it definitely was not competitive within the game. You certainly wouldn't want to be playing it up against a lot of the other tier 10 heavies in the game, and of course it is the FV215B, or the one of the three brothers with the tier 10 British heavy tanks. This one is kind of the tank that it missed the buffs and the basically competitiveness of the other two. And of course, when we look at the tech tree, it is one of three. It leads off from the Conqueror. This one is, or was, definitely the weakest or the runt of the litter when we compare it to the Super Conqueror, the Super Broken, and of course the Chieftain Mark 6 as well. This one, however, boasts the best DPM out of the three. It is unbelievable how fast this thing can fire. Now, with the update and the side armor increases that you can now see on the tank, you're basically able to actually bounce shots when you side scrape. So originally, with the update previously, you were not able to side scrape very effectively. You basically got penned no matter what kind of angle you were doing. It just wasn't effective whatsoever. Yes, you could angle and you could bounce maybe potentially some of the tier 8s and tier 9s, but often they still went through the side. You see the little box that's just below the turret. That was a very easy spot to actually pen it as it side scrapes. I don't know if we'll be able to show it on screen right now, but you can see that there's the turret, and then on the hull you see that little corner rectangular kind of shape that's been cut in half. Yeah, that was the kind of weak point of the tank. Now that got buffed a little bit, I believe, with the most recent update, which allow you to actually bounce a few shots. Now, it is quite difficult to hit. However, if you only side scrape using the side of your tank, you will be able to bounce a few shots. And of course, now that the armor on the side got upgraded, you should be able to reliably bounce more shots. Well, we'll see that in the gameplay later on in the FV215B. As for the statistics of the vehicle, of course you have decent penetration, as with the Super Conqueror, 259mm of standard penetration with 326 premium penetration, 120 on your HE rounds, which isn't awful, but it's certainly not a round that you're going to be firing at very many tanks that you're going to be facing at tier 10. Vision range 478 meters when it's upgraded using the equipment and stuff. So you've got coated optics, and of course I do have a crew within this that does have the situational awareness perk, which allows you to get an extra 6% max view range. And so, yeah, combined 478 meters view range is fantastic on a heavy tank, so you can definitely get assistance damage within the FV215B, and that's something that I think a lot of players in their heavy tanks don't necessarily take advantage of, and that is where this tank comes in clutch. You are able to take that view range to the next level and be able to get both assistance and also standard damage using the DPM of this tank, and boy oh boy is the DPM on the FV215B ridiculous. You will be able to absolutely pump your opponents full. Tons and tons of damage per minute. You have super good aim time and accuracy, considering this is a heavy tank. 0.3 accuracy with vertical stabilizers, of course, and 1.5 second aim time is ridiculous. 7 degrees of gun depression, making the tank somewhat flexible. And also, you have a decent power to weight ratio, not particularly the best, but you will be able to get up to your top speed, which is of course somewhat of a limiting factor at 34 kilometers an hour. You aren't going to be shifting around the battlefield anything like a medium tank, but yeah, I think that the tank itself has the DPM, so when you get to the fight, when you actually reach the opponents, you'll be able to deal enough damage within that time to make it kind of worth it, the fact that you have the sacrifices to your mobility. Now, with the tank, of course, if we look at the detail statistics, which you can do in the garage if you press Y on the armor view or module viewer of the tab, for those of you who don't know that anyway, you can see that the standard kind of tank itself has 2,500 hit points. That's with no equipment. I wouldn't ever really recommend putting on the equipment that reduces the damage that you're going to take by 5%, etc. But yeah, what you'll see is the reload time. 6.88 seconds to do 400 alpha damage. is ridiculous. Utterly bonkers. You will be able to have, what's that, like 3,500 DPM on a tier 10 heavy tank. This one is ridiculous. Absolutely one of my favourite tier 10 heavies. It's not necessarily the most competitive heavy. Yes, that will probably still go to the Super Conqueror because of the fact that it just has that such strong turret, and if you get hold down, it's basically a big finger to the enemy team. But this one, still very competitive, and of course we will get into some gameplay, show you how it can be played in the most recent update on World of Tanks console. Of course, subscribe and like the video if you like this one, and we'll get into the gameplay now. Now, our first game is obviously here on Himmelsdorf. Not a bad map for the FV215B. Obviously, you want as many buildings between you and the opponents to be able to side scrape off of them, to be able to use them to your best of your ability. And of course, if you can be aggressive, if you can put your DPM to good use, poking around that corner every single time you're reloading, firing into an opponent that you're hoping to pen, yeah, you'll definitely have some good games in this thing. Now, I'm not saying that this tank is perfect. There are plenty of situations where this tank becomes somewhat lackluster. I mean, for starters, you can only carry so much in this tank, 35 rounds. Now, that's not particularly the best amount of rounds that you can carry in a premium, in a vehicle even, not a premium. And certainly if you want to be able to have a good mix of premium and standard, it's going to be slightly difficult for you because you do have to pick your ammunition wisely. Obviously, for the majority of situations, you don't probably want to have very many HE, but for those kind of odd occasion, you might. The one thing that you'll find is that your rounds seem to disappear very, very quickly in this. If you're firing every single time that you reload, you will only have enough rounds for approximately 3.5 minutes of firing. Well, just over that. It's like 3 minutes and 3/4, which, yeah, sounds like a long time of continuously firing, but you know, the game is 15 minutes long, and if you are in a fight like this on Himmelsdorf, where you are reloading and firing almost instantaneously, then yeah, it doesn't take long at all for you to be able to kind of run out of those rounds. Now, I'm getting a little bit bored of corner fighting here, side scraping out against the opponents that we're going to be playing against. Need to get rid of the Tiger, and now it is time to advance, or at least try and make a push on this corner. I do need some support, otherwise we are going to get taken out very quickly. So I'm kind of waiting around, seeing what my team are going to do, seeing what the Object 705 is going to do, because if he sits in that position where he is hold down, then yeah, it's not particularly very fun for us. Of course, we do have to kind of pressure him somewhat because we have got a bunch of tanks to our right on the hill who have successfully won the hill, and if we don't actually sort out what we're doing quickly, we're going to lead to some, yeah, pretty horrible stuff when we're getting sandwiched between this Object 705 and potentially the people coming behind us. Of course, I realise that, and we're going to make a big pressure play because we're not small brain and we've got a little bit of brain anyway for this game. We are basically... yeah, well, there's a reason why I nickname this tank the Tinderbox, and that is because it does get set on fire almost every single time that you play in it. I'm having a little bit of difficulty here. Obviously, I've got fat fingers or something right now, and so yeah, we had a little bit of problem. But no matter, we have tracked the Object 705. We're locking him down in place using the DPM of the tank to be able to put shells out constantly into his tracks, and he's going to find it very difficult. Obviously, I believe that he's probably firing heat in the 705A, which means that he's just tracking us, or at least dealing damage to the tracks being absorbed, which is always very nice with a tank like the FV215B, which you do have a bunch of tracks all added into one on this tank. Now, knowing that we had a bunch of tanks over to the right, and knowing that that's probably where the majority of the hit points on the enemy team are, I think that that's where we go to move towards. Luckily, our team have actually cleared them up pretty well, and so we're going to move towards the TD over there and try and get as much damage as possible over on this side. Now, we did note that there were a few tanks being pretty sneaky in the back on their side, just trying to block us from advancing, and we're about to spot them in a second. And that is the WZ-111 Quillin, which is probably the best tier 10 heavy tank in the game, if not just in World of Tanks in general, to be honest. That tank can reload in 8 seconds and deal 500 alpha damage. It's almost like being a Cold War tank, but in World War II. Yeah, it's just unbelievable, the reload on that thing. And so, yeah, now what we're trying to do is make sure that their team can't advance too quickly into our spawn, and therefore win the game. We do see that you can actually get a shot through that little fountain to be able to get shots on the 268 version 4, was it? I believe, or version 5, whatever it was. The TD that advanced, obviously we didn't manage to hit them, but we did hit that T-54E1, unfortunately for him, as we take a little bit of his hit points away. Now, knowing that they're going to be going towards the cap, and if we don't go back, I'm going to get bloody capped again, because that seems to be all that happens on World of Tanks right now. So what we're going to do is go quickly back into to try and actually get towards the cap. Now, unfortunately, we get stuck on one of the silly buildings yet again. But what we do now is try and get as much damage as possible. Unfortunately, he does pen us there, which is a little annoying, and now he does have a reload which is going to out-reload me, so we're going to have to get lucky if we actually manage to avoid his shell. We're using a bit of side-scraping, hoping that he fires at us. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, and he does. Very big misplay from him. He should have just came around the corner and fired at me whilst I was on my reload. But, of course, his loss and our gain, and we're now going to move towards the cap. And we have a full health tank in there, kind of in the spawn, and it is that Quillin, which is just so dangerous. T-54E1 comes around, bounces off of us, luckily, and now we're going to put pressure on the Quillin, who, for some reason, has got a fly in his brain once again, and he's now just sat in the cap circle. Didn't realise I was there, should have fully aimed that shot, would have made it so much easier for me in a little bit. Of course, what we're doing now is hiding our lower plate to be able to put damage into him. I don't know why I'm auto-aiming constantly, but that is a massive misplay from me. We do know that his cupolas are his weak point, and so what we're doing is we put one into his cupola. He doesn't manage to actually deal damage to us. We're then going to put our gun inside of his gun to try and avoid the shot, but it doesn't matter in the end, and our team secure the damaging shot on the WZ-111 Quillin, winning us the game. And yeah, we pulled out a little bit of a clutch situation at the end. Going back for the cap was definitely the right decision, and we managed to shut down a few of them. 5,147 damage is no mean feat in the FV215B, but it certainly isn't an amazing game. Yes, it is a tank that definitely got its armor improved. It's definitely more competitive. Its gun is so good in the game. The DPM on it is just unbelievable in World of Tanks, and I don't particularly think that I would recommend this tank still. I think it is usable. It's certainly nowhere near as uncompetitive as it used to be. It's kind of one of your average heavies now, I guess, within the game. It definitely shouldn't be overlooked, the DPM though, because that rate of fire is absolutely disgusting. Of course, let me know what you thought of the FV215B in the first gameplay. We're going to get into a second one trying to show off what the FV215B can do in some different matchups. And the final game clip is here on Kasserine. We are playing, of course, back in the FV215B. We're going to take the right-hand mode, or the right-hand cap circle at B. This is multi-base assault mode. Unfortunately, I'm not particularly a big fan of the multi-base assault mode. That's just because there's a lot of features within it that I just don't really like. I never really like cap circle. I think the second part of the standard battle in terms of destroy all enemies to win is something I much prefer to do. Trying to cap, yes, it is sometimes necessary, but not always the funnest option. And so that's why I always go for damage if possible, as long as I've got a really good chance of winning, of course. I don't throw the game just because I want a little bit more damage, or at least unless I'm going for my marks of excellence, at which point sometimes it is worth it to lose the game, even though, you know, you should be getting as high a win rate as possible. Now, in terms of this game, Kasserine isn't particularly the nicest map for the FV215B. Yes, you can use the map to the best of your ability if, you know, you can perform well, but the problem is the tank just doesn't really suit it. Now on ridge lines, this tank is not particularly the best one because it is rear mounted, which means you have to expose a lot of your tank to be able to actually get your gun depression. Yes, you can turn side on, but then often the ridges are too kind of bulbous for you to be able to do that. Now I'm thinking that I was going to get spotted there, but luckily for us we didn't manage to get spotted against a Super Conqueror who's made the play of going into defend B. Now, it's kind of one of those times where we have to kind of sit and wait. We're not going to push up too much. I'm kind of fearful that I will get spotted. And of course, we are sat on the top of a massive hill, which is open to a lot of opponents who may or may not be hidden at the back. Now, we put one good shot back into the tank, and then we do get spotted here. And it's time to kind of make a move. We bounce off the Super Conqueror, which is kind of unlucky, but he bounces off with us. So that's always nice. At this point, I should have just loaded premium ammunition, because for the most part, coming up against a Super Conqueror's hull with standard is actually kind of difficult sometimes. Now, I'm not saying that you need premium in order to go through them all of the time, because if you aim it properly well and you aren't in a clutch situation where you have to pull off a shot fairly quickly, otherwise he's going to pull back, then yeah, you can actually end up bouncing off of the Super Conqueror, and therefore premium ammunition is probably the better choice. Like you're seeing here, we're going for the lower plate, but we keep hitting the upper plate, and it's not really going very well for us. We've taken 2 shots of damage to literally no shots of damage, which is really, really annoying. Luckily, the gorilla sat in the top right hand corner of our screen is being an absolute hero. He's put 1 shot and set him on fire, and it meant we got 900 assistance damage, which is really, really nice. And so yeah, nice one from the gorilla as he shuts down the Super Conqueror. And what I was aiming for there on the Fatherland is actually just to track and pen him, but unfortunately we didn't, and unfortunately we bounced off of the Fatherland, which is, I was getting a little bit annoyed at the fact I kept missing shots and just being an absolute bot myself, and just, it was frustrating to say the least. Put 1 more back into the Fatherland. He's on 395 hit points. He should not be able to one-shot us unless he rolls high. We put 1 more back into him using the DPM of this tank, and the gorilla shuts him down, although we did low roll because we only hit him for like 370. Now you notice I'm still up against the rock. Why is that? Well, the Defender and the KV4 were still over in that position, and if I was out where I was, they could potentially maneuver themselves to be able to get that final shot on me, and then I would be out of the game. So, today's game, it has gone appallingly. Let's not beat around the bush. I have lost all of my hit points. I haven't even done, well, I've just done over the amount of damage that I've received, which, yes, is not particularly very good within the game. But the Defender is here to save our day. We're going to put in a couple of shots into him as he's reversing, trying to back up away from the gorilla. And of course he's firing on the move, which probably means he'll be missing. And we have got APCR loaded, so the Defender's side armor is just paper, and we are penning him every single time. So there we go. He's out of the game. We're out of APCR rounds now, however, meaning that it is a bit of a clutch situation. We put 1 into the Object 277 there, and there are 2 tank destroyers sat there that we're kind of a little bit afraid of, as we put 1 into the SU-130PM, and now it's time to pull back and just get into a position that we can't basically just get automatically penned. We put 1 more back into the SU-130PM, bringing the damage total up to 5,000, so it's suddenly come out of nowhere. This is what happens with the FV215B. You don't notice how much damage you're racking up in quick succession, because it's kind of just like every 6-7 seconds you're reloading and you're dealing damage consistently because you have the accuracy. Yes, the tank's kind of drawback, the mobility does hinder the tank so much, and I really do kind of... That's kind of the limiting factor, I'd say, is that yes, you are limited by the speed, and getting forward into a position, often you'll get caught out in the open depending on if you've moved into the open or not, and that's kind of something you have to take into account when you are playing in this tank. Now, what you'll see me do in here is pre-aiming for the SU-130PM, because if we pre-aim something like this, we know we've been spotted, and we go for the blind fire because he's going to be back there. He does bounce off of us because we're in a nice little position where he probably only saw the turret of our tank. And now that he has fired, he is pulled back, and there's nothing he can do now. we're just going to wait. We're going to wait until we get either spotted or we spot him. We do realise he spotted us, so we fire, and there we go. We've picked up some extra damage. That's something that you can handle or use yourself. It really, really is super, super crucial if you want to be able to have those games. That kind of shot right there, it saves you in so many situations. And not that many people kind of realise that, yes, although someone's gone undetected, does not mean that they are fully undetectable. Now, there's 2 tanks left alive and there's 5 on our team, although, granted, a lot of our team are on absolutely minuscule amounts of health, me included. STI is over there on full health, along with the Waffenträger FV100, who is on a lot of hit points, as you'll see, full health too. Now, there are 3 of us left. However, there's a medium tank, AFK in base, and so it's down to me and the Gorilla 15 to be able to carry this end of this game, and to be able to not have a terrible game. Now, what you see me doing here is just getting into a position to kind of set up against the Gorilla. I tell the Gorilla basically to try and stay nearby so he doesn't just run into the Waffle E100 on his own, and then I'm not going to be able to get there in time because the Gorilla has so much more mobility than this slow-ass tank does. Now, we're waiting and waiting and waiting, and, you know, typical of World of Tanks, as soon as you move, or as soon as you do something that you think, maybe they've not come this way, maybe they've not actually decided to stay here, maybe I'll just alter myself or alter the position of my tank to be able to go somewhere else. Yeah, it's very typical that, you know, we're going to get, the Waffle's going to come around, or the Waffle's going to do something, or the STI is just suddenly going to come around, and so now we have to pull back. Waffenträger E100, we have to be quick. We get stuck. Oh, it could be painful. Luckily, we don't manage to. And the problem with this tank is what you see here. If I was in a Super Conqueror, I could get hold down, and by the time he reached me, I would have put 2 shots into him, and he wouldn't have been able to do too much. What we're having to do is we quickly get away, and now it's time to move and do Ring Around the Rosie with a Waffle E100, with that huge 15 centimeter. Of course, if he hits me, that is me knocked out of the game and pens. Whereas if I hit him, I have to hit him at least twice, and I have to high roll both of them. Now, the medium tank, as you'll see in the bottom right hand corner, for those of you with a keen eye, you see that he's actually come back. He's no longer AFK, and what we're going to have to do is put 1 shot into the Waffle. I tried to track him, but unfortunately I moved, and then I didn't get the tracking shot to be able to stop him from bringing his turret around. And the KPZ50T, who's on our team, is now 1 versus 1 with the Waffle E100, at least 1 versus 1 in the scenario, but you know, he's on full health. The Waffle was almost out of clip, and so, of course, he's going to win that situation. Now, moving on, back to the Gorilla. Now, the Gorilla has had a fantastic game so far, 6k damage as well. He's picked up 700 assistance damage, probably just both of us combining each other's assistance and stuff like that, because we work quite closely. And, yeah, the Gorilla, the STI misses, which means that it's now time for the Gorilla to shut him down. And of course, we win the game. The Gorilla picking up 7,175 damage. A massive, massive shout out to Mir Signet. And yeah, he picked up a decent amount of total damage. He did pit me to the pole position within this game. I did pick up, however, 6,534 damage with 1,278 assistance, bringing the grand total up to 7,800 combined damage, which isn't awful in the FV215B. Yet again, not particularly one of those games that is absolutely insane. But it did highlight what the FV215B is like, and you can see just how much damage you can rack up, even if you are on that one-shot potential in the game at the start of the game. So there we go. I hope you did enjoy this video. Of course, if you want to check out more gameplay videos, I have tons. The Object 279E, we've got videos on the Tiger 1, and of course there'll be plenty more videos coming along on the channel. So if you want to stay tuned, then you can subscribe, and if you do like the video, then like the video, and I hope that you'll join me back in the next video. Goodbye.